Imagine being born into a world that doesn't quite reach you. Sound and vision are blurred. Language acquisition, the thing that lets you enter reality with others, is delayed. And when language is delayed, time feels different. Communication becomes effortful, and when communication becomes effortful, the world feels resistant. Helplessness at that stage is not a thought, it is a bodily fact. You want to express and be understood by others, but you can't. Helplessness becomes rage. When I was younger, it exploded outwardly. Direct resistance, refusal. But around 12, something changed. The rage condensed. It became contempt. If the system is beneath you, you do not rage at it. You observe it. You provoke it. You test it. You expose its cracks. A sense of superiority crystallizes here, not as arrogance, as structural compensation. If the environment underestimates you, you invert the hierarchy internally. The logic becomes simple. If I am constrained, it is because I am above. Superiority stabilizes identity. But there are two costs. The first is a sense of oppression. You understand more, yet you decide nothing. You see the irrationality, yet you must comply. You are evaluated by systems you consider beneath you, governed by people you believe perceive less, contained by rules that do not recognize your depth but still determine your movement. You are above, and yet beneath. The second cost is loneliness. Superiority creates altitude. Altitude creates distance. You observe people more than you join them. You anticipate rather than trust. When you are alone with your thoughts, you return to that early sensation. The world does not quite reach you. That is where addiction begins. Addiction is not about substances. It is about intolerance for helplessness and boredom. It was the second outcome of that early helplessness. Both addiction and superiority distort freedom. For a long time, freedom meant expansion, dominance, not being contained by people, institutions, or internal states. Freedom meant never feeling small. But if you cannot tolerate limitation without interpreting it as injustice, you are not free. Freedom is not rising above the structure. It is remaining within it without feeling diminished. Strength is not dominance. It is the ability to stay without armor. World building is the deliberate construction of a coherent reality. You invent geography, history, cultures, political systems, religions, and conflicts, not as fragments, but as parts of an internally consistent system. Mountains shape trade routes shape cities, cities shape institutions, institutions shape belief. Everything connects. Conlanging is the construction of a language for that world. Not just vocabulary, but sound systems, grammar, morphology, semantic structure. You decide which distinctions matter, which contrasts are phonemic, which relations must be marked. At the surface, this looks like advanced imagination, but philosophically, it reveals something deeper about the human need for form. When reality feels fragmented, the mind is drawn to systems that hold. When life feels contingent, authorship offers a temporary experience of necessity. Addiction is not fundamentally the pursuit of pleasure. It is the inability to tolerate states in which nothing is happening, nothing is controlled, and nothing immediately restores a sense of agency. Helplessness and boredom expose a person to unstructured time, and that exposure can become unbearable. The addictive act becomes compelling because it interrupts that condition. It replaces emptiness with intensity. World building can answer the same need, but in a different way. It does not merely stimulate, it organizes. Instead of abolishing helplessness as quickly as possible, it can turn helplessness into form. Time becomes history, confusion becomes system, inner pressure becomes design. The mind does not simply escape into sensation. It builds a structure in which tension is distributed, shaped, and made intelligible. That is why the real issue is not whether a practice gives relief. Many practices do. The question is what kind of relation to helplessness that relief creates. If relief merely removes helplessness at once, the pattern moves toward addiction. If it teaches the mind to remain with helplessness long enough to shape it into order, the pattern moves toward creation. That is the threshold on which world building and conlanging stand. They are among the clearest cases in which the need for order can either deepen dependence or become a training in freedom. They can become elegant forms of avoidance, but they can also become disciplines of transformation. A coherent world cannot be sustained by impulse alone. A language cannot be built carelessly. Both require limits, memory, revision, and patience. Both force the mind to stay inside structure rather than merely consume escape.